Let's start coding our feature. So we're going to start off by creating a loop which is going to go over each of these items, and then that loop is going to find this element, an element with the ID of, let's say, home, about, and contact, and attach a mouse enter event handler which is going to actually set the text of those buttons, text of that helpful text for that particular div. So over here, I'm going to start off with a loop. So I'm going to come over here at the bottom and say for var I is equal to 0. And as long as I is less than the length of this help text list, then I plus plus. So our loop is going to go from the index or the I value of 0 all the way to the length, as long as the length is less than I. So the length over here is 3. It has 3 items. So it's going to go from 0, 1, and 2. So 0 for this one, 1 for this one, and 2 for this one, because as you know, the array index starts with 0. So it's 0 index. So with that, I'm going to start my loop. And over here, I'm going to, first of all, query each of these elements. So I'm going to come over here and say, let's say, let btn is equal to document.query selector. And then over here, I'm going to provide the ID of, let's say, contact. And how do we do that? We already know we got the helpful text over here, right? So I'm going to say helpful help text list. And we want to get the first index. So I'm going to say I. So that's going to get the first item in the first iteration. So over here, that's going to get the index of 0. So when the loop runs for the first time, I is equal to 0. So it's going to say helpful text, get the first index, which is 0. So it gets this particular object. Now, if I want to get the ID of that object, we already know with objects, we just want to do dot and the name of the property. So I can say dot and ID. So this will capture the value of home. All right. So just to demonstrate this to you, I'm going to say, come over here and say console.log, and I'm going to copy this, paste over here. And I'm going to comment this out, save, refresh, and I'm going to actually open my Chrome DevTools, go to console, zoom this, and you see that this loop ran 3 times and printed out home in the first iteration, about in the second iteration, and contact in the third, because it's capturing these values each of the time. If I just want to print out the entire object, I don't need to provide the ID. I can just say, hey, get the helpful text, the first item, the second item, the third item, each time the loop runs. Save, refresh, and you see it prints out the entire object each time. Okay, but I don't want that. I just want the ID. So back to our example over here, we want to make every time this loop is iterating, I want to capture the button in the btn variable, and the query selector is going to have this particular value. And since this is an ID, I'm going to append it with a hash. So I'm going to put some quotes, and I'm going to say hash sign plus. So this is going to capture that particular element. So just to demonstrate that this did the job, I'm going to just console.log btn, save, refresh, and now you see the first iteration got the home, second iteration got the about, and then the contact. So our querying part works. So if I go over here, we already kind of did this part. Actually, there should be step number 1 as well. So actually in the loop, we have to capture the element and then attach click handler. All right. So that's the second step we're going to do now. Save, and now this is the easy part. We already know this. All of this is easy because we already know the constructs. So I'm going to say btn.add event listener. The event listener name is mouse enter. And when that mouse enter event runs, I'm going to call a callback function. And again, in this case, I'm using arrow function because this is a classic perfect place to use arrow function expression. Now, what does this arrow function do? The job of this arrow function is to simply grab the corresponding text and set it to this particular item over here. So we need to capture this item first before we can set it, right? So we already know how to capture DOM elements, which is const again, and I'm going to call it help text elm. So elm for element is equal to document.query selector. And what is the name of that element? Help dash text with that class. So that captures this particular element. All right. And now we can say help text elm dot text content, and the text content should be, come over here, capture that, and instead of getting the ID, we want to get the text. Make sense? Nothing complicated here, right? We're just combining all of these constructs to assist us to achieve our goal. And we're thinking like a developer to solve these problems. Of course, it all comes with practice. I'm telling you all of these answers, but these are common ideas, common constructs to build modern applications. So I'm going to save this, and you see it should work. So let's see what happens over here. I'm going to refresh. And now if I hover over here, we get an error. And what does the error says? Cannot read property text of undefined. And I'm going to leave you over here with this video because explaining you the problem over here is going to take some time, and I want to break these videos down into smaller steps. So this is going to give you the first breakthrough about closures. Talk to you in the next lesson.